live. Preparing to live stream. Still preparing. Still preparing. Not yet.
It does look like we are live on the website.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, I just pulled it up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Environment Subcommittee. We don't have a lengthy agenda, so hopefully we can get this taken care of in about 15 minutes. The agenda includes two bills, which are cross files. They're somewhat different posture, so I'll ask Kristen to explain them in a second, and then SB 135. So with that, Kristen, could you discuss HP 449 and SP 148?
Yeah, so what I'm showing on the screen right now is House Bill 449 with the sponsors amendments. So as amended by the House sponsor, the bill would authorize annual funding of up to 20 million beginning in fiscal 2026 from the Comprehensive Flood Management Grant Program. And then it would require 40% of that funding to be used for projects located in or directly benefiting underserved or overburdened communities. And so the cross file came over from the Senate. It's very similar, but there is additional language that would direct that 40% of the funding to also go to areas in which over 90% of households are at extreme risk of flooding in the next 30 years.
Right, and I do have an amendment which was sent out with materials for the subcommittee, which would strike that 90% provision. So that is an amendment I'm going to propose to SP 148. And Dom from MACO does have another proposed amendment, which in a second I'll ask him to explain. But before he does, any questions about what either bill does? I mean, again, the one difference is the 90% provision in SB 148. But let's see, Delga Terraza.
Oh, actually, never mind. I was just looking for the 90%. Now I see where it's crossed out. Thanks.
Now, Kristen, that would be with the amendments.
With the amendments. So I just
That's
brought up the screen of the reprint copy of the Senate bill with the chair's amendment. And that is on page 4, lines 23 and 24, that language about the 90%. That's where it's coming out with your amendment.
Right. So it's a separate amendment from the amendments concerning, that change the grant funding of up to $20 million and then saying that it takes effect in fiscal year 2026.
So I did just switch the screen back to the House bill since those were the amendments that were first discussed.
Right. Okay. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I support the amendment to remove the 90%. I think that amendment really makes it not an environmental justice bill, because while it's certainly bad for communities that have up to 90% flooding, there's nothing to say that they might not be wealthy communities. And I think the intent is to really ensure that the communities that need it most, that are overburdened and underserved, have the access.
Yep. Good points. Other questions about the bill with the amendments that we've discussed so far? Okay, Dom, do you want to talk about the amendment that you're proposing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just really quick, so just so everyone understands where Mako's position is, as the bill initially came in, we were fully supportive of the legislation. As the bill moved through the Senate, we shifted our position to support with amendments. We view this as just being a little too restrictive, especially considering what these funds are going towards. And, flooding can impact, a variety of areas. We want one very, very simple amendment. So in line 16 on your screen right now, it says located in or directly benefiting. We would just like to strike or, and so it would say located in, directly or indirectly benefiting. So insert or indirectly benefiting an underserved or overburdened community. We just view that as adding a little bit more flexibility to how these funds could be used.
Okay, all right, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you give an example of indirect benefiting?
I mean, so it could be that we have to, do flood mitigation downstream. There could be economic impacts where we know that, this might be a industrial corridor that we want to put some flood mitigation around. I mean, because of the unique geography of the state, especially our susceptibility to sea level rise, there could be a diverse array of scenarios.
Okay, Delegate Ruth, you could, or do you have a follow-up, or?
I'm not really completely sure how I understand how that benefits underserved or overburdened communities. I'm sorry, but I'll move on.
Okay, Delegate Trasso.
Yeah, I was actually had a similar question. I don't understand that too. Like, that seems to me that it wouldn't, like, it would take out that section basically to say it could be indirect if you're saying it's as broad as some economic development. Like, so anything in the county would indirectly benefit those areas. Am I misunderstanding that?
So that's not our intent, and we don't view it that way. But we do see that we understand that there is going to be a significant, need for these funds, especially in a jurisdiction like Howard County, or for really any of our jurisdictions in Maryland. We're uniquely susceptible to flooding. So I don't think I really answered your question, but because it is so unique and flooding can hit so many different places, we want to make sure that we have flexibility for an emergency. Like, this fund is used for, we know there's going to be flooding, there's going to have to be some emergency mitigation. We want to make sure that there's still some flexibility there.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this only says 40% of funding is benefiting projects located in or directly benefiting underserved or overburdened communities. So that still leaves 60% that could be flexible.
So that's true, but there could be a scenario where, let's say that you have communities that aren't underserved and overburdened, or, they're not directly being impacted. But there's flooding downstream, or there's flooding somewhere else, because again, flooding isn't something, unique and predictable, and it could go to other places. So there should be, we agree that there should be some planning, and we do understand that this is part of Justice 40. We don't want to get in the way of that. But we are saying that flooding happens in a way that you kind of can't plan and say, well, evenly there's going to be 40%. Here's a scenario we don't want to have. We don't want to have an emergency situation and then 40% of our funds to do mitigation is locked away and we can't access them when there's a community in need. And so we just want to make sure that there's flexibility still there. Again, though, keeping that overburdened, underserved, and EJ lens.
Okay. Any further questions about what Dominic is proposing? Delegate Guyton, or is that, did I see a hand go up?
You did, and then I took it immediately down because I wasn't sure how to phrase the question. I think this is one question that I had. I may have actually asked the sponsor during the hearing, is where the 40%, I mean, I know where the 40% came from because I asked him that, but if that is actually, I see what Dominic's saying. So if that is actually the amount of area that we have that has underserved population along areas that are also likely to flood, or I mean, I can see what he's saying, because if we do have a huge flood event, and let's say the majority of it is not in underserved populations, but some of it is, so that would be taken care of first with this 40%. This is precluding us for utilizing any of the other funding, even if an area is completely wiped out. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. Can somebody answer that question? Does the money then just sit there?
Kristen, do you have a thought on that? I think you're on mute.
I am, sorry. Yeah, so that is the language. It is directing 40% of the funding. So, you know, potentially, I'm not aware of any other provision that would then allow funding to go for these emergency purposes. It does seem like the 40% would be, you know, carved out for these communities specifically.
Okay, Delga Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think first of all, I think to delegate guidance question, there's still 60% of the funding. And so I want to just hone in a second on what Dom said. I mean, I hear what he's saying, but I share the concern of some of my colleagues. And the statement that, you know, there's a huge disaster and 40% of our funding is locked away. That concerns me, because if it's affecting an underserved community, then it will be used. That 40% is there. But if it's not, then, you know, that money should be there for them. So I'm concerned about that indirect language, because it's really, really broad.
Okay. All right, Delga Tarraso, I'll give you the last question, and then we need to start voting on amendments. So, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay, if this is the last question, I'm just trying to figure out. And I don't know, maybe we could ask Rebecca Rare, like it seems to me that this is if the purpose of this bill is to direct this to underserved or overburdened communities, like, doesn't this just sort of water that piece down? I mean, see, like, maybe that means we don't support it, or some don't support this bill, but isn't that the purpose? I mean, it seems to me like that's the purpose of the bill. And then, sort of as a technical question, is there somebody introducing the Mako amendment, or?
No, I was going to ask if someone wants to move it. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, as I read the bill, it says a minimum of 40% of funding is to be provided for projects in underserved or overburdened communities. So it's not, you know, the funding isn't exclusively for underserved or overburdened communities, but at least 40%. It could be more, certainly, depending on need. Delga Love, do you have a quick question?
No, my apologies. That wasn't supposed to be up.
Okay. All right. So since we're going to be running up against session very soon, what I'm going to do is, with respect to the amendments, first I'm going to ask if anyone wants to move Dom's amendment. And then the next amendment we'll take up is the one that I proposed. But, you know, we'll start off working with the Senate bill. So, you know, the next amendment will be the one that I proposed to the Senate bill, which takes up the 90% reference. And then we'll consider the remaining amendments in SB 148. So having said that, would someone like to make a motion as an amendment, which would add the language that Dom is proposing, which would add or indirectly benefiting to the 40% provision? Does anyone want to make a motion on that? Okay. Motion fails. Then we will move on to the next proposed amendment, which is mine, which
Move your amendment, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussions about that amendment? All those in favor of that amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And then the other amendments.
Well, Mr.
I'm
Chair, so for this is on the Senate bill, there are no additional amendments. You do see language that's underlined that the Senate added, but that's how the bill came over, so
Oh, okay. My apologies then. Okay, so it's the bill as amended at this point then.
correct.
Okay. Bill as amended, is there a motion?
Move the bill as amended.
Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bill passes as amended. So then taking up House Bill 449 and let's see here, Kristen, I guess we do have to approve the amendments, which are the fiscal year language and the up to language. Is that right?
Yeah, and the motion could be to conform the bill to Senate Bill 148 as just passed by the subcommittee to simplify it. The bill, the amended bill is in the same
Oh,
posture.
sorry.
Okay.
I was just gonna move to conform. Sorry, Kristen.
It's okay.
I really
Okay.
apologize.
No, that's fine. Okay. Motion to conform House Bill 449, SB 148 as we passed it. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bill passes.
I do think you have one opposed.
Oh, do we have one opposed?
Doug and Morgan, I saw.
Okay. Okay. All right. Duly noted. All right. So Kristen, our last bill is Senate Bill 135. Why don't you explain what that bill does? And I think we do have these technical amendments that have been proposed.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I had a reprint copy. So this bill is creating a work group to study funding for the Western Port wastewater treatment facility. And what the amendment language does, it's striking the legislative members from the work group.
Ah, okay. Any questions about the bill or the amendment? Okay, is there a motion on the amendment?
So move.
Second? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? Bill as amended. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill as amended passes. And I think we are done. And I do believe this is the last subcommittee meeting of the year. So thank you everyone for your hard work. And Kristen, anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you everyone. See you on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
Kristen.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. And sorry about interrupting you.
Oh, you're fine. There's a delay, so I always interrupt too. Bye.
Bye.